Thank you again. I'm hosting a party and seeing people from all different parts of my life, mostly my Booth life. But this is my 25th year of teaching at Booth. Really honored to do this session for you on leadership capital. Well, building your leadership capital. So we're going to go ahead and begin. This is what you received or heard about before you got here. Leadership is a Choice is the essay that I asked you to take a look at just to set the groundwork. If you had a chance to see the video, that's great. If you didn't, I'm revisiting some of the notions from it. So that was where we started. So I wanted to tell you that one of my former students handed me this, and they said, "Linda, you're the face of leadership." And I was like, oh my God, how did that happen? I don't even like leadership. I really don't. My first love was management. And when I first started teaching more than 30 years ago at Stanford, the business school, I taught management, and I fell in love with management because I'm an experimental social psychologist. And what I do every day is help executives, help people like you to put social psychology into practice. And it is such an honor, and I've always loved management. Leadership, I kind of got dragged into it kicking and screaming. I really did. So how this happened, I don't know. But I will tell you another thing about this, is that I have been working for over 15 years trying to figure out what is leadership and how to teach it with integrity. And this has been one of the hardest things that I've had to do in my career. I've been through it's not over yet, but I have a very full and complicated, wonderful life. I've had my share of difficulties, and very few things keep me up at night. And trying to figure out what is leadership, how to teach it, as I said, with integrity, is one of the hardest things I've ever tried to do. So you are here today as part of my mission to change the conversation around leadership and to improve capacity, to try to help people to figure out how to make better choices so that we can create a better future. And that's really what my mission has been for the last at least 15 years as I've been focusing on leadership. I have a little bit of a plug for Eric McNulty. This is an article that just came out this week in MIT's Sloan Management Review. And the title is Leadership Development's Epic Fail, right? So, and it's a sort of a summary of some of the work that I have done in using my approach in teaching leadership or leadership development. So this is just this week, and here I am, and here you are. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, I want to tell you that I am not a speaker, like a motivational speaker. I don't give keynotes and such, but I do consider myself an educator, and welcome to my classroom. Or welcome back, if that may be. So here you go. Why is leadership hard? Well, leadership is hard because it doesn't live in one discipline, right? It isn't like if you are an expert in this discipline, you go deep and narrow, you are an expert in leadership. It's multidisciplinary. It's interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. There's no consensual definition of what is leadership, right? I talk to people who make a living doing leadership development, and I've asked, what's your definition of leadership? And you'll be amazed at some of the definitions that I get from people. So who do this for a living? For example, one time I asked someone, what's your definition of leadership? And he said, he does this for a living, and he said, well, influencing people. Influencing people to come around and to come around to your point of view and getting things done. And I said, well, how's that different from management? Said, well, I guess it isn't. So then the question is leadership different from management? What is leadership, right? So it's hard because there's no consensual definition. The other thing that's hard about it is, honestly, people will sell you anything you're willing to buy. And this is really a problem. So I want to help you I don't know if I can help you to be a good consumer of the leadership industry information, but I want to help you to think more complexly about what is leadership to you. I want to help you to develop your own perspective, and that's what we're going to do today. So this is my class. This is the objective of my class today, is to help you to develop your perspective on leadership by sharing mine. I hope that will help you. All right? That's my plan. Marvin Minsky, the father of artificial intelligence, he said that point of view is worth 80 IQ points. 80 IQ points. Just think, I can raise your IQ today. Just by helping you to develop your own perspective your own point of view. And as I said, I want to share mine in a few minutes with hope that it will help you. Now, I have to give a shout out to Lindsay Rolfe. She is one of the amazing partners from Ink Factory, and Booth hired them. This is a public service announcement. I get no kickback from them. I just love them. Booth hired her company to do a graphic recording of a speech I gave for the Booth Women Connect conference a few years ago, and I just love her work, and I asked her to create some illustrations for me so that I can teach from her illustrations. Instead of putting a lot of words on a page, I believe that you'll remember things better, and she has a way of capturing the gist and communicating it directly, and so that's why we're lucky enough to have her illustrations to teach from today. So what's your definition of leadership? We're going to start here. What I'd like to ask you to do, because this is a class, you are in my classroom, we're going to spend 4 minutes, really just 4 minutes. I have my phone, I have a 4-minute timer, and I'd like you to talk to 1 or 2 people around you, and I want you to, look, maybe you have a definition of leadership, and maybe you've had it for years and you're happy with it. Maybe you've never actually even thought that it was important, or what does it mean. Maybe you've never articulated it and had a discussion. Maybe you have and you think you have a great definition of leadership. Wherever you are in that world, in that domain, what I want you to do is to be able to write down your definition of leadership, okay? It's really important to write it down, because if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist, okay? Yes, so we're going to do 4 minutes with 1 or 2 people around you. Talk to each other about what do you think is the essence of leadership? What's the gist? What's the core essence of what is the definition of leadership? Let's come back to class. Now, if we have 3 hours, as we have on occasion in the past, what I would do now is to have discussion and to elicit a lot of the comments and points that I want to make, but to have you drive it. Given that we have 1 hour left, I'm going to be a little more directive and more focused than most of you know me to be from my classroom, so that I can use the next hour to the best of my ability. So what I'm going to do now is to talk with you a little bit about some of the themes that I not predict, but that I know came up in these discussions, because I've been helping to facilitate these discussions inside and outside of my classroom for many years. All right? So that's where we're going to go, is to some of these themes. So I hope that you wrote something down. And the reason I said something is that, I always tell my students that what we have to do is to write things down, because if you don't write it down, it's a figment of your imagination. It just exists in your mind. And if it exists in your mind, then you can't collect it over time. You can't analyze it. You can't experiment with it, because it's not data. And we're at the University of Chicago, and we love data, right? So one thing that I want to help you to think about is, why do we value the data from experimental social psychology, from sociology, from economics, from finance. But we should also value the data of our own experience. If we can collect the data of our own experience, practice across time, experiment with the contingencies between what we do and what we get, then we can actually be wiser younger. And one of my goals for my students is to help you, each one of you, to be wiser younger. Because no one here is going to be younger than we are today, but we can all be wiser. All right? So write it down. If you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. If you write it down, it becomes data. And you can collect data, reflect on it, practice, and experiment. This is what Booth's own Harry Davis calls insight skills. How do we learn the right lessons from experience, right? So we need to collect data, and then we can become our own coach. So to draft, the dictionary definition of to draft is to create by thinking and writing. And it's a skill, and skills benefit from practice. So one of the themes today, well, there are 2 themes today. One is behavior and action, and the other is choice. And so behaviors benefit from practice. Behaviors are the basis for our actions, and when we practice these behaviors, they become skills. So I hope that you have written something down, which is either an iteration or the first time you've done that. there's a quote from Drucker. I'm going to quote from Drucker a couple times. I really like this book. It's an oldie but a goodie, and it probably contains some of the most practical advice that you can get in terms of management. But one of his concepts that I use a lot is called zero draft. So when you work with people and you ask them to give you give me a draft, give me your ideas, give me something. And a lot of times people want that to be perfect or are afraid that they can't meet what you need or that. So you know what I started doing? I started using Drucker's term, zero draft. He says that the zero draft is the draft before the first one. And it's so great, isn't it? It's like, just give me a zero draft. Just a zero draft, that's all it is. Very not intimidating. It's in butter, it can melt in the sun. It's just a zero draft. So think about, you draft, you create by thinking and writing to get people started, including yourself. Maybe you can frame it as a zero draft, the one before the first draft. All right, so that's one thing about data and creating data. We'll come back to what's your definition of leadership. Okay, here are some of the things that if we had more time and we would have more discussion if people had seats and we're able to be more leisurely, we would come up with. So maybe we can do a show of hands. How many people here had or heard or have thought something about people being born with it? That leadership is something that some people have, other people don't, but you're basically born with it. So how many people either heard that, thought of that, have heard other people say that? Yeah, it's a very powerful notion. I consider all of these myths, and I will explain why. So I'm going to take that one on first, all right? So I told you my job every day in the classroom is to help people to be wiser, younger. And this is a illustration that I have created in order to help people think about what it means to be born with it. So it's just imagine a normal distribution. So we can assume that this normal distribution represents all of us in this room. Okay, so we're on this normal curve, and there's a mean, and 96% of us are somewhere around that mean. The outliers, right, the 2%, there's 2% over here. See the red with scratching his head? If you are that person, and I really don't know, it could be you. I don't know. And you know what? You don't know either. But if that's you, I am really sorry. Because whatever it is, you were born without it. And all I can do is apologize. I don't know. If, however, you are that person, the one that person over here, that outlier on the plus 2%, baby, whatever it is, you were born with it. You had it when you walked in this room, and you're going to have it when you walk out that door. And nothing that I do in this hour that we have left is going to harm you in any way. Because you are on a rocket ship to the moon. You were born with it. What I do is I spend most every one of my days with the 96% of us that are somewhere between these two extremes. And my job is wherever you are on that curve is to create as strong an environment as I can in my classroom to move you up that curve. Now, some of us have farther to move, and some of us will move farther, right? Further. But that's my job. I also think this is a picture of your job. Your job is to create strong environments that move your people in a more productive direction. And this is actually one of the lessons of social psychology. And social psychology is my home discipline, and I have a few more things to say about it. I consider my job in the classroom to help you to think more like a social psychologist. And I'm going to work on that today as well. So this is my argument against, because people say, Linda, that leadership stuff, can you really teach that? I mean, people are either born with it or not, right? Or they say, it's just common sense. You know what I say to them? Common sense isn't so common. Doesn't always make sense. Okay? So this is my answer to, you have to be born with it. Some people are, some people aren't, but most of us, we can be wiser, younger. We can we can build our leadership capital. Bless you. Okay. Here's another thing that probably came up. This is an image from the article that they were so kind to distribute in advance. A lot of what comes up, and let me see a show of hands, if you've heard, thought of this, believe this, have other people around you believe this, that leadership comes with your title. that it is the prerogative of certain authority, that or certain credentials, or that there's sort of some label that you get, and that makes you a leader. Right? I mean, that's interesting that we don't have as many here. So that means that we're up the curve faster, probably, in this room. But a lot of people say, for example, people say, you know, Linda, I'm just a manager now. But someday I'll be a leader. Someday I'll be a leader. As though it's some distinct person or individual or place in life. And also, it shows you that leadership is elevated above management. And this is another myth that I want us to try to tackle today. And just put our toe in it, okay, if you haven't already thought about this. So a lot of my students, especially the students, I don't want to say younger students, but students with less experience or less perspective on being an executive, a lot of times they'll tell me, you know, Linda, I want to be a leader. And I know I need a vision. Where do I get a vision? Where do I get a vision? That's what I need. I need a vision to be a leader. So, well, you get a vision from the present. You get a vision from your understanding of managing, of what's going on in the present. So, again, we'll come back to more of that. But they're not titles. They're not positions. They're not credentials that make you a leader or not. This is an introduction. I'd like to introduce you all to Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin is the founding father of social psychology. He's the one who has this great, my favorite quote, "There's nothing so practical as a good theory." This is his quote. Why are theories so practical? I mean, we're at the University of Chicago. We love theory, right? We love theory. But it's not ivory tower pie in the sky stuff. Theories are practical. You know why? Because theories help you to create frameworks, and frameworks allow you to organize your data in an efficient, effective way so that you can withdraw that data outside the classroom when you need to use it. It helps you to it helps you to be analytical. So frameworks and concepts are incredibly practical. And that's what we do every day in the classroom, is help you to think about how do you organize the data of your experience or the data from other disciplines so that you can draw on that data and that knowledge outside the classroom. Which reminds me, I just have to say this. You know, I have precious small amount of time. With you, I have an hour and 15 minutes, and that's it. And I really want my time to be productive. I care a lot that what I do, I want to have meaning in my work. I assume you do too. I also don't want to waste my time here, and I don't want to waste yours. But I have such a small amount of time. So what I need to do with my time is to try to do the best I can to create this strong environment to help you to create your perspective, think about these two notions of behavior or action and choice, so that you can change your outcomes outside my classroom where it really matters. So I won't know whether I've done a good job today at 3:30. I'll only know, and you'll only know, when you actually put some of these notions into practice and change your behaviors outside this classroom where it really matters. All right? So don't prove me wrong. Let's not waste our time. We're going to try really hard to make the time that we have together useful, valuable, and get you out of here so that and when you leave here, you've left with some motivation, maybe some tools, maybe some practice even, to think more complexly about and to build your own leadership capital. All right, so that was a public service announcement. All right, so Kurt Lewin, nothing so practical as a good theory, and he gives us this sort of fake equation. So, you know, I'm a psychologist in the world of economics, right? Economics is in the seats you're sitting in, it's in the water you drink, it's in the air you breathe. And so every once in a while I create these fake equations just so my students feel comfortable, right? They're at booth, all is right with the world, this table is really here. And so this is my favorite equation. And basically, this is another myth, or it counters another myth about leadership. A lot of times we think that leadership is about the person, right? So we go around acting like behavior is a function of the person, right? We look at you and we say, oh, you know, you are the way you are because you are an ENTJ, or you are a high sensation seeker, or you are a firstborn, or you're a cucumber or a pickle, or whatever the category is, right? And we put cause inside of people. But in fact, behavior is a function of both what's inside of Stephen and what's in Stephen's environment. And actually, in strong environments, the situation accounts for more variance in behavior than the individual. Just look around right now. Just look around here, okay? You see what an enormously diverse group of people are in this room? You're all very unique, very different, and yet each of you is behaving exactly the same way. Most eyes are on me. Some people are taking notes. I attempt to joke, right? You attempt to laugh. This is called classroom behavior. This classroom is built for... Do you see any windows in this room? Do you think they want you looking away from me? No, I'm here, and you have to turn your head away from me to not see me, right? Because all eyes are on me. And so the environment, the situation is created to encourage classroom behavior. So strong situations can move behavior in directions that you can help to create. So create strong environments that move people's behavior in a more productive direction, including your own. One of the lessons of social psychology is if you want to change someone's behavior, change their situation. Don't try to change what's inside of Tu or inside of Sakshi. How are you? Okay, so don't try to change what's inside of them. Change the situation, change the environment. As an executive, you have more control over the environment anyway, right? What is in the environment? What's in the behavior is a function of the person and the situation, right? So think about it. You have more control, just take work, over what's in the outside environment, right? The peer group. Say you're trying to change John's behavior. Well, what about his peers? What control do you have over that? What about the nature of work itself? What about incentives, monetary or non-monetary? What about the culture? And what about the biggest factor in John's environment? You. Or say me. I am the executive in this classroom, right? I am. And I make choices, and I behave in a certain way, and you reciprocate. You also, I would bet, unless you have training as a social psychologist, I would bet my mortgage, that you underestimate the impact of your behavior in eliciting behavior from those around you. There's a contingency between what we do and what we get. But we often look at people and think that their behavior is about them. Behavior is a function of, that's Kevin. And in doing so, we underestimate an incredibly strong part of the situation, which is me. So you can experiment with your behavior. You can change your behavior. That changes the contingency between what you do and what you get. And reciprocity is a powerful force for behavior, right? So there's two kinds of reciprocity, at least. There's positive reciprocity, right? If I'm generally kind and warm and charitable to Candace, she will generally reciprocate, okay? If I am cold and condescending and belittling to Luigi, he will reciprocate, right? Maybe not right now, but when I least expect it. There is positive reciprocity, contingency between what you do and what you get, and there's negative reciprocity. So contingency between what you do and what you get, if you experiment with that, you can learn a lot about how to change the environment. So as an example, what's the law that accounts for that action? Gravity, right? Every time in this environment I drop a pen, it's going to fall to the ground just like that. We don't have laws in behavioral science and social psychology, like physical laws like gravity. The closest thing we have is reciprocity, right? How I behave to you and how you reciprocate. If you want to change her behavior, what's your name? Leslie's behavior, change your behavior, and see what you get. All right, so that's about contingencies and the power of the situation. That's the gist of social psychology. You want to change people's behavior, change the situation. We tend to default and try to change what's inside the person. Managers, as a manager or an executive, we're going to talk about labels in just a minute. You have much more control over what's outside of Leslie than you do over what's inside of her. I mean, clinical psychologists can't even change what's inside of Leslie, right? I mean, she gets to go, if she wants to. But as a manager, you think you're going to change what's inside of Leslie? And pay thousands of dollars and all that time, right? So that's the lesson of social psychology. And also one of the myths that leadership is inside of you as a person, as opposed to how can you think about your behaviors as an action, which takes me to my next illustration. Leadership, I would like you to think about leadership as a verb. to lead, as opposed to a noun, leader. And it sounds simple, and it's really hard. I have been trying not to use the word leader and manager, and I still fall prey to this, using it as a noun instead of a verb. Try it. Try it like homework assignment. When you leave here, just try to use the words to lead and to manage as opposed to leader and manager. Because I want to argue that leadership is a behavior, that it's a choice as to whether we manage or whether we lead. And that's where we're going now. So again, choice and behavior, action. So it's a verb, not a noun. And here's the first of the gist of our words for today, choice. So many of you have seen something like this before, right? It's on the cover of Nick Epley's book, Mindwise. You know what it's called? Like the label for this kind of figure? It's called a reversible figure. It's reversible. And the reason it's reversible is because usually we see black letters on a white background. And what they've done here is they've put white on a black background. So they've reversed the typical figure-ground relationship, and they made the ground figural. So that's why it's reversible. All right, so in other words, if you focus on the white, what image do you see? What does it look like? A vase, chalice, right? If it were closer to 5 o'clock, it'd be like a martini goblet or something like that, right? But everyone can see that, right? You can see that. Now, look at the black around the white. But what does this look like? Two faces in profile. Do you see that? You see the forehead, the nose, the mouth, the chin? All right, two faces in profile. Now switch. You see the vase? Yeah? Okay, now switch again. Do you see the profile? You are deciding what to see. You are making a choice. And that's black and white on paper. This is not even people. This is not even complicated people which have motives, intentions, hidden from view, all sorts of notions. So choice is a watchword for executives. You have many more choices than you. I believe, in my experience and my teaching, that my executives have many more choices than they act on. And I would like you to expand your notion of how much choice you have. And this is part of building your leadership capital. Okay? So, choice. This is from the article, Leadership is a Choice. This takes us to where we should be right now. I told you that you're part of my mission to change the conversation around leadership. And one of the ways I want to do that is by changing the labels and the words that we use. Now, as an executive, the words you choose are incredibly important. Different executives can say the same thing, basically have the same gist or connotation in their speech, but use different words and have communicate very different things. So I'm trying to stop using manager and leader as labels and start using executive, because it's hard not to have a label. So that's why these are crumbled. And this is nice and, okay, executive. So I'm trying to refer to my students as executives and instead of leaders and managers. Now, different professors try to handle this problem in different ways. My mentor, the late, great Hal Levitt, used to do manager-leader. He would just write manager-leader in order to communicate that you're the same person and you're just doing different things. I've had other people who say, I just use the word leader, and everyone knows that I mean manager and leader, or vice versa. Well, in the classroom, maybe people know that, but in the real world, people talk about leaders and managers as different people or doing different things. So I have gone with Drucker's use of executive. So here's why I chose this. This is, again, from his book. This is the piece I wanted to read to you. I have called executives those knowledge workers, managers, or individual professionals who are expected by virtue of their position or their knowledge to make decisions in the normal course of their work that have significant impact on the performance and results of the whole. All right? So, does that definition say anyone has to report to you to be an executive? No one reports to me. Really. I'm an executive. You know why? I make decisions that affect my organization. Every day I have choices that I can do that. For example, Here's another myth about leadership, that it has to be with a capital L. Big transformational leadership, right? Everyone thinks about leadership with a capital L. But if we think about leadership as a choice and with a lowercase l, leadership can be these small decisions that we make every day to create a better future. And I, Linda Ginzel, have the opportunity to engage in leadership behaviors in my organization, and I don't have a title as an administrator, I don't have a staff, I don't have a budget, and yet I make choices that improve the future for my organization. For example, I'm going to give you a public service announcement. Harry Davis, great man, he hired me, very smart guy. He's been a pioneer in all that many of you know, in leadership education. He started the LEAD program at Booth, or the GSB. And some years ago, we had his 50th anniversary of teaching. And he's very involved in executive education. And I have a nonprofit organization, so I'm sort of involved in the nonprofit world. And people would often come to me and say, executive directors of nonprofit organizations say, Linda, we'd love to go to exec ed courses, but we just can't afford the tuition. But our executive directors or our marketing executives would really benefit from executive education at Booth. So I would go to the then dean of executive education. I say, do you mind if I have a guest in my classroom? It's a nonprofit executive. They can't afford it. I'll pay for their food and I'll pay for their books. Do you mind if they sit in on my class in exec ed? And he'd say, oh, Linda, you do so much for us. If you want a guest in your class, you can have a guest. And about 4 times a year, I'd have a nonprofit executive as a guest in my class. And this went on for years. And then Harry Davis had his 50th anniversary of teaching. And I thought, why don't we make this official? Why does it have to be people who ask Linda whether they can come and me to go ask a favor? Why don't we create the Harry L. Davis Executive Education Scholarship for nonprofit executives? We're giving away 4 seats a year anyway, but no one knows it, right? And it's not available to everybody. And I had my undergrad RA look, and no one in the country no other business school was doing this. Harvard has a nonprofit management course, and they give nonprofit executives a discount, but we couldn't find anyone who had a executive education scholarship for nonprofit managers so that they could benefit from and contribute to the learning in the executive education classroom. So you can go online if you know any deserving nonprofit executives. See, I also don't have a budget, so I'm advertising right now. So I don't have a budget to advertise this, but if you go online, Exec Ed, the Harry Davis Booth Executive Education Scholarship, you can spread the word, and some deserving nonprofit executives can come and learn at Booth in our executive education program. That's leadership. I change the future. And who am I? You can change the future too. See, depending on your definition of leadership, you might be constraining your own choices. And that's okay, because that's you. But what if you're also constraining the choices of the people around you because you have a limiting definition of what it means to lead? Then you're compounding the bias of that definition. It's not just affecting you, but to the extent that you're in a position where you actually can affect others, you might be reducing or suppressing people's opportunity to choose to engage in leadership behavior. That's why it's so important to understand your definition of leadership. And we're not finished yet, so that's where we're going. All right? All right, so that's my mission, to use the word executive instead of leader and manager. So I still want you to be thinking about your definition of leadership, but I told you that I would tell you how I've been thinking about leadership. I've been working really hard on this. I have read more than I have wanted to read on this topic. And here's my current thinking of what I call leadership capital. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'm an executive, okay? I'm one person, Linda Ginzel, an executive. This is going to be my managing aisle. Most of the time, I and you are managing. When we are managing, we're in the present. We're in the here and now, all right? We are making the budget. We're meeting the street's expectations. We are, getting things done. The terrain is charted because we're in the present. We know where things are. We can see them. There's a road there. There's a bridge there. the terrain is charted. So my metaphor for managing is a map. Okay, you have a map. You can see what's going on. When you are managing, you really need people's heads. You need them to be with you on what you're trying to accomplish, because they need to help you make the budget, make the productions schedule, get everything done. If you have their heart, that's great, but when you're in the present managing, you really don't need their heart. You need their head. When we're managing, usually the type of power that we are using is called legitimate power, right? We have a title. So through legitimate power, people will often do what we ask them to do because we're the boss. We also have reward and coercive power, right? I can reward you with a nice assignment, or I can give you a bonus, or I can take away a cushy assignment, or take away visibility. But I have these, as a manager, in the present, these are the sources of my power. They're called legitimate, reward, and coercive. I have a map. But you know, a lot of times people think that management is low level. And I'm here to tell you that if you're not a great manager, you don't create, management is the platform for the future. Management is how we get to have a future. And management is where trust is built. Trust is built in the daily contingencies between what you say and what you do, what you give and what you get. So when we are managing in the present, we are building trust, and we're helping people feed their families. Management is a noble profession. I want to help you not to degrade your ideas or your thoughts about management, but rather to elevate them. We are managing when we are in the present. Once in a while, we make a choice. And it's a risky choice. And this is the choice to lead. Once in a while, as an executive, we decide, usually it's because we are somehow dissatisfied with the status quo. The present is the status quo. Most of the time, we are maintaining or enhancing the status quo, and that's just fine, and that's the right thing to be doing. Once in a while, we are dissatisfied with the status quo, and that causes us to make a choice to create a different future. If we're dissatisfied in a small way, that might be leadership with a lowercase l. If we're dissatisfied in a big way, that might be leadership with a capital L. But leadership is a choice to create a different future. So this is going to be my leadership aisle. Now, I'm still the same executive who was managing over here, but now I have a vision. Where did that vision come from? It came from the present. It came from my knowledge, my being an amazing manager, a great manager who works there every day and figures out how to get things done. Now, from that, I have some dissatisfaction with the status quo, and I decide to make a change. So now I am going to be a leader. I'm going to, see, did you hear me just say leader? I'm going to engage in leadership behavior. That's why it's hard to say, because it's longer and it's just harder. Okay, so here I am. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking a risk. Because, see, that's solid ground, and I know what's going on there. But when I decide to go into the future, I'm going to a place that doesn't exist yet. So I better be very sure that my vision of the future is a good one, that it's much better than the present. Because I'm going to a place that doesn't exist yet. And you know what else? I need your heart and your head. Because you need to follow me into that unknown place that doesn't exist yet. You have to believe in my vision of the future. Right? So I need your head and your heart to create that future. The kind of power that we rely on when we make the choice to lead, there are two kinds at least. One is called expert power. That means that you follow me into that future because you think that I have expertise, knowledge, and understanding that you don't. And you look to me and you say, I believe in her expert power, in her expertise. The other thing that you use when you are leading, when you decide to lead, is referent power. Now, I want to say something about referent power. A lot of times when people talk about leadership, they use the word charisma, right? And they say, you know, you have to have charisma to be a leader. And I'm here to tell you that that is another myth that can cause you a lot of grief. Because whoever is your charismatic ideal, say it's Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, whoever is your charismatic ideal, you will never be able to meet that charismatic ideal. All right? And if that's what you think you need to be a leader, you're never going to make that choice because you're always going to fall short. I think another thing you should be careful of is having other people tell you what kind of leader you should be. You should be this kind of leader. You should be that kind of leader, right? You know what kind of leader you need to be? You need to be whatever kind of leader you are that harnesses your referent power. Referent power is your ability to be a role model. When you have referent power, people look at you and say, I want to be like her. I want to do that. I want to be like her. And then they imitate you. I mean, they imitate you. They're a role model, not imitation in a superficial way, but they actually believe in your mission. They want to be like you. They want to help you succeed. They want to follow you. That is the best definition of charisma. So if you have to use the word charisma, think about it as source of referent power. And there's many different kinds of referent powers. There are people in this room. And you need to figure out what it is about you that makes people want to follow you. And if you need to imitate or try to be somebody else or try to follow someone else for a while, that's okay. You can fake it until you make it, as they say. But at some point, you're going to have to figure out what it is about you that gets people to follow you, and that's your source of charisma. And that's how you're going to have people's heads and hearts. That's how they're going to buy in to your vision of the future and follow you into that unknown place and not be concerned that they're going to go over a cliff. So, when you are leading, when you've made the choice to lead, there's no map. The best you can have is a sense of direction. That's it, just a sense of direction, because the terrain is uncharted. Oh, you put it away already? Yeah, that's good. Putting it away is good because it's safe. Compass. Compass. That's why. Did you wonder why you got a compass? Yes, so here we go. So the compass is, here's my little image for you. So this is, again, the amazing Lindsay Rolfe, who created this image when I was explaining to her, what do I mean by managing and leading and following? So here we go, right? There's a map when you're managing. There's a compass when you're leading. Following is much misunderstood. People think of sheep when they say, I don't want to be a follower, or what does it mean to be a follower? Really, we have followers when we're managing and leading. And effective followership is when people are thinking and engaged. So this is her image. And I give you this compass as a symbol of the choice to lead. Now, I'm going to say a few things about symbols because the green pen is also a symbol. And we'll come to it in just a minute. This is a symbol. It is not an incentive. It's not a prize. It's not a, it doesn't even work. I mean, seriously, it is so cheap that I do not think you should rely on it for navigation. And I'm not really trying to be funny, but the reason it's so cheap is because I need to have many of them and to be able to give them freely. And that's a symbol. What the symbol is it communicates something of importance that I teach, and I want you to remember. Okay? So this is a symbol. I want you to be thinking about what symbols do you use when you try to manage meaning, when you try to communicate something that's really important at the core of your message as an executive. So this is my first putting your toe in a symbol. This is the compass. All right. So managing, leading, executive, right? The labels you use, the images you think about when you think about what is your definition of leadership. How do you think about leading versus managing? So let me kind of put this up. So another way to help you to articulate or to get a better handle on what you think about leading and managing. I just told you what mine is, right? Mine's about the present versus the future. Mine's about the choices that you make, how you think about that. I'll give you what my kind of working definition is of leadership at the end of the session. But I want you to be thinking more complexly about the differences between managing and leading. And when you do this, I want you to try not to push management down and elevate leadership. I want you to try to make them kind of even though you'll see this is very hard. Because in our popular culture, in our language, we elevate leadership almost by default. Okay, so over the years, this is my executive MBA students. Over the years, I have done this in my class. I teach in Hong Kong, before that Singapore, in London, before that Barcelona, and also in Chicago. So this is a compilation from my executive MBA students in my course, Leadership Capital. So we start with leadership on one side and management on the other. So you can see some of the things that the students have contributed over time. So I'm showing this to you because I want you to think also what jives with you, what catches your attention, what's interesting to you. So we're talking about change versus stability, movement, vision, future present, transfer value, aligning value, internalization, externalization, art and science, right? Here they have heart, this is leadership, heart and head. They get more interesting as we go down because these are like the earlier ones, and then the later ones couldn't repeat the earlier ones, so they had to get more creative. So that's where we're going. Passion versus stamina. It's kind of interesting, right? You need stamina. If you're a manager, you're in the present, you're fighting fires, you're getting things done, you've got all these deadlines, you're working on these things. And so the question is, what's more important? What's more important, stamina or passion? What's the answer? Yeah, good. It depends, right? What does it depend on? Depends on lots of things. Depends on, in this case, whether you're managing or whether you're leading. They're both important. Passion isn't more important than stamina. You can be passed out and be all passionate as you want. I mean, I tell my students all the time when they say, just give me a vision. I'm like, what do you live in some kind of hallucinatory state that you just have this vision? I mean, we have to also get things done. Management is about getting things done through people. We need both stamina and passion. We need all of these things. If we don't have today, where's this one? We don't have tomorrow. Where's today and tomorrow? I just saw it. Yeah, here we go. Oh, yeah, it's down further. If we don't have today, we don't have tomorrow. Courageous and ask why and ask how, right? So they say leadership asks why, management says, okay, how? Defining success, measuring success. Intoxicating versus sober. Imagine if who needs leading all the time? What can you be intoxicated the entire time? You're with all your passion and that's all you're doing. Wear people out, including yourself. Make good choices about when you take that risk to change the future. Because once you start enacting that, you better be sober and you better have stamina to make that future the present. Because at some point you're going to make that decision again, and you're going to have to go down that road. And by the way, when you are leading, that's when you withdraw on all that trust that you built when you were managing. Leading is a withdrawal from the trust bank, because you have to get people to trust you and believe in your vision, because you can't show them that future that doesn't exist yet. And all that trust is built in the present. This is, my favorite. Green pen versus red pen. We're going to talk about green versus red pen. And then, this is cute also. Belt is the manager, right? You tighten the belt, and then the suspenders support you. Isn't that an interesting image, right? The belt and the suspenders. And then the last one here, and I would be so happy if you send me an email and tell me what your juxtaposition is or what, and I will add it to my workbook. I'm going to show you what this is from. This is from a workbook from my course. It's really just fancy handouts, but really, it's just fancy handouts. I call it a workbook because then maybe my students will work in it and continue to build their leadership capital outside my classroom. Remember, I only have students for a certain number of hours, but you have all your life to continue to develop your capacity. And my hope is that I can help you, motivate you a little bit to move up that curve. All right, so lion and tiger. This is interesting, and I had to do a little bit of research about lions and tigers in order to understand this. So maybe some of you know this, but I didn't know this much. So tigers and lions would never meet because lions are in the plains and tigers are in the jungle, right? So why did they put tiger as management and lion as leadership? So if you think about it, you're a tiger, you're in the jungle. and there are all these, what are those called? It's a rainforest. What are those? Trees, right? And you can't see the forest for the trees because you're in there. You're a tiger. And you're looking right, you're in the present, boy. You are right there. Lions, they're in the plains. They have a long vision. They have a horizon way out to there. So that's why these students said tiger and lion. Now, they'd never meet, so we don't know who's better, who's going to fight. I mean, maybe we could do some predictions. We don't even want to know that answer. But it's not that one is better than the other. They're different. So I'd be very interested. I hope that this is, I find it fascinating. I hope that just putting your toe in this might help you to also think about how do you juxtapose leading and managing in order to help you to better articulate your definition of leadership. Okay? All right. We're very close to coming to the end of what I wanted to do with you. We got to do the green pen. So this is the cover of my fancy handouts. And you see what's here? My two symbols, the green pen and the compass. So I think what we're going to do now is move to the green pen, and I'll try to leave a little bit of time for questions. That's the next handout on the desk in front of you. And you have, now, I want you to notice something different. What do you notice that's different from the picture and the pen you have in front of you? Yeah, this has a fancy Chicago booth logo. So I'll tell you, if you were in my classroom, in my MBA classroom, you're gonna, as my students here just got this, their pen is not branded because it costs $1 something per pen to brand them. And I just told you the symbols have to be cheap so that I can give them freely, right? So these are courtesy of executive education. So, Linda, are you here? Say thank you, thank you. This is why you have booth-branded green pens, because executive education was delighted to provide them to you. All right, so the green pen. Here's the story. It's a symbol, okay? It's a symbol. And I learned about the management of meaning from Jeff Pfeffer. So my first job, I'm an experimental social psychologist. I did my PhD at Princeton, and I'm actually the first Princeton PhD to take a job in a business school. And that was in 1989, and when I did that, it was heretical. It was like, you're going to teach managers how to manipulate people. It's terrible. And my husband said, well, if anyone can do it well, Linda can. I went to a business school because I wanted to help managers, executives. I wanted to help people to make a difference in the world. I wanted to help them to apply, to use the knowledge from social psychology to create a better future, to create a better world, to make a difference. So I went to a business school because I wanted the knowledge to be relevant, to be practical, to helping you make better choices. And so at Stanford, when I was an assistant professor, I met the amazing Jeff Pfeffer. And Jeff Pfeffer is one of the most prolific writers in organizational behavior. He just wrote a book. I should have brought it to you. It's called Leadership BS. And it's kind of about that, leadership industry and how we'll buy anything that they'll sell. It's a little curmudgeonly, but he basically has the gist, right? Anyway, when I was at Stanford, he taught me about the management of meaning, and this is a lesson that I have carried forward and try to enact every day of my life. He said, Linda, what executives do is they manage meaning. And you manage meaning, again, through the words you choose, through your behaviors, through what you like awards that you give, even non-monetary incentives, what you make salient and available in people's minds through signage, through newsletters, through all sorts, through the website. You manage meaning every day. I have been thinking a lot about how do I manage meaning with small, tangible symbols. They came from Jeff Pfeffer. And one of the things that I do is give every one of my students a green pen. Because if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist, right? It needs to be, if you write it down, it becomes data. So I brought this other book I want to show you. I don't know how many of you have read. This is our own Richard Thaler. And if you like first-person narratives, this is it. I mean, he is, there at the founding, what he calls the making of behavioral economics. And he's one of my favorite colleagues. And I want to read to you something from his book. So at the end, he gives advice, right? And we're talking about data and writing it down. So stories are powerful and memorable. That is why I have told so many in this book. But an individual anecdote can only serve as an illustration. To really convince yourself, much less others, we need to change the way we do things. We need data, and lots of it. As Mark Twain once said, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. People become overconfident because they never bother to document their past track record of wrong predictions. And then they make things worse by falling victim to the dreaded confirmation bias. They only look for evidence that confirms their preconceived hypotheses. The only protection against overconfidence is to systematically collect data, especially data that can prove you wrong. Are you ready for this? As my Chicago colleague, Linda Ginzel, always tells her students, read with me, if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. There you go. He even says so. All right. Now, here we go. So what does this mean? What I tell my students, and you're my students now, all of you, or again, is, for example, you come first to the class. You write down, even if the professor doesn't ask you to write down the analysis of the case, you should write it down anyway, because then it's data. Otherwise, it's a figment of your imagination. So let's say Ryan writes down his analysis. And let's just say for fun that Brianna doesn't, right? So Ryan and Brianna come to class, and they go to their group breakouts. And Barbara says really smart things. And Brianna's like, yeah, I knew that. I thought that. Well, did she? Well, we don't know. Oh, of course, she's saying yes, she did. Yes. She is very, very smart. Now, she can believe that she thought those smart things that Barbara said. And she can fool herself because it's in her imagination. And she's pretty smart, so she probably did think about it. And she can also say, I thought of that. But Ryan has the data of what he thought. Because he may have thought that it was important, but he didn't think it was important enough to write down. So he takes his green pen, and in the margin, he writes that really smart thing that Barbara said. So Ryan can collect time 2 data on his diagnosis and analysis of this problem. You don't need to be in the classroom to do this. You're diagnosing and analyzing situations all the time in the real world. The only reason we provide cases in the classroom is because we're not in the real world dealing with those situations and needing to solve them, right, in the real world. So in my negotiations class, we have a framework for preparation, right? You prepare in advance in writing, and then you take your framework with your data for preparation to your negotiation and your green pen and in green ink. You write the things you missed, the things you got right, what you want to think about next time. You are becoming your own coach. You're collecting the data of your experience. Remember I told you I want you to elevate the importance of the data of your own experience, and it's as important as data from the disciplines of economics, psychology, political science, even finance. Okay, so this is the idea, is to collect the data, become your own coach. Because it's great if you have a boss who gives you feedback, or if you have a spouse who gives you feedback, or if you're like me, you have a teenage son who tells you everything you do wrong on a moment-by-moment basis. That's feedback. That's data. But just think how much wiser you can be at a younger age if you collect your own data, if you become your own coach. So this is the essence of what Harry Davis calls insight skills, and I call it being wiser younger. Okay. So why green? Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet, said that he wrote his poetry in green ink because green is the color of esperanza. What's esperanza in Spanish? Hope. So I give you a green pen with hope. that you will use it as a tool to collect data of your experience, that you can analyze, that you'll experiment with the contingencies between what you do and what you get, that you'll collect the data across time, that you'll look at trends and patterns in your behavior in order to reflect and understand why you do what you do, and then to experiment and to be wiser, younger, and to move up that curve. If you were in my classroom, we would give you feedback in green with hope that feedback would be useful to you as well. So that's the point or the purpose of the green pen. And I want to tell you that green pen has taken on a life of its own. I walk down Michigan Avenue, people walk up to me, I don't remember them, don't know them, they're like, oh, Professor Ginzel, I use my green pen all the time. Or, I have to tell you, I was in a situation I needed all the hope I could get, so I took my green pen out. But the point is, what symbols can you create? See, this is really important to me. This notion to collect your data, I need my students to get that, to understand that at their core, so that when I'm not around lecturing them and telling them to do it, they do it. So they take out their green pen and they hear my voice. And my voice says, green is good. Green is good. Yeah, right? And the more green, the better, because you're getting feedback, you're getting data, you're going to be able to change your behaviors and improve your outcomes. All right, so we're almost finished. I didn't leave a lot of time, but this is the last new image that I wanted to give you. Keep calm and do green pen work. It's a tool to collect the data of your experience and chart your trends, and you can collect it in the color of hope. Right? Now, back to your definition of leadership. I hope that you either wrote something down or that you will promise me, Scout's honor. It's been a long time since I'm a Girl Scout. Scout's honor, that you will write something down before you leave today from this conference. And I'll show you what my definition, my working definition right now is. And it is behavioral choices we make in order to create a better future. This is my working definition of leadership. Now, if you come back, if I'm invited back at some point in the future, I hope I have a different, better definition of leadership. But that's the best I can do so far. That's my latest iteration of what my definition is of management. Now, that may not speak to you, and that's fine. Because remember, I opened this with you need to create your own point of view. You need to have your own perspective, your own point of view. Remember Marvin Minsky? He said, point of view is worth 80 IQ points. So, let's see. The capacity in this room is about 150. But I think we have, what is that, 5 minutes. Thank you. I was like, 5 o'clock? Wait, why 5 o'clock? But I think we've got, I don't know, way more than that. So if we take, 160, 170, 180, 190 people in this room times 80 IQ points. Wow. 16,000 IQ points? Not bad for an hour's work. We just increased your IQ. Look at the community capacity in this classroom. So we do have 5 minutes, not 5 o'clock, but 5 minutes. I want to thank you very much for being part of my mission to improve your leadership. Here, really, it's been such a pleasure, such a great day. And I have my first. You please leave if you want to leave, but there's a question.
So, culture change is very important in lots of organizations. Do you view that as a management skill or a leadership skill?
Yeah, so I think it's both, and it depends. So what I work on is I try to work on leadership development. So I'm trying to create. What's your name?
Mark.
You're not my student. I've never had you in my classroom before. Welcome to my classroom, Mark. It's very nice It's very nice to meet you. It's my honor. So I'm interested in Mark and helping Mark be the best executive he can. Now, this Mark in this classroom cares about culture change. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked this question. It's important to him. It's salient. He's thinking about it. So my question for my job for Mark would be, how can I help Mark to figure out how best to change the culture? And if it's change, we're talking about leadership. If it's managing the culture in the present, it's management. So I'm not sure, you said culture change, which is more of a different future. But we have to do that in the present as well. So it depends on how much authority you have, how much time you have, how much consensus you have. It depends on how much work has been done as to whether you can do leadership with a capital L or you're doing leadership with a lowercase l every day. And it's a really important question. I want to tell you the reason this is such an important topic is not just about work, right? What we're doing, we're expanding our own personal capacity and the capacity of those around us. It's about the space between me and Felix right now. But it's also maybe myself and my husband. It's about the space between Felix and his team. But it could also be about Felix and his family. And it's about the space that we're creating at the organizational level booth. It could also be about our communities, our church, our synagogue, our mosque, whatever is our community that we want to elevate the capacity. So leadership capital, my hope for you and for all of you is that you will continue to build, what is leadership capital? The wisdom to decide when to manage and when to lead, together with the courage and capacity to act on your choices. So it's kind of a high-level answer to your question, but it's the one that I feel most comfortable with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one last one, or we want to go? Let's go.